I wish you don't make it in that labor room, you bitch. I will pay you 50 million naira to leave my son alone and get out of his life, you poor little gold digger. I want the two of you to monitor her whereabouts, and if she tries to make any suspicious moves, get her out of the way. You slut and gold digger, you want to reap where you didn't sow, you liar. Hello, lawyer. My life is being threatened again. If anything happens to me, open chapter 13, unedited version. Hey ma'am, let's meet in court. What would you do if you were offered 50 million naira to leave the person you're currently dating? Would you walk away or stay? This is the story of Sophia, a poor orphan who fell in love with a billionaire's son. But before we dive into the full story, don't forget to tell us where you're watching from in the comments, like this video, and please subscribe.
Before we unravel today's story, make sure to like, comment, and share. You're watching the Global Storyteller Official, where every tale leaves a mark.
It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 stars above the ballroom. Guests in gold and champagne fabrics clinked glasses, whispered blessings, and snapped endless photos of the stunning bride in her lace-covered gown. But in one corner of the room, behind an ice-cold glare and perfectly sculpted makeup, sat Madame Felicia Wellingham, billionaire, business tycoon, and the bride's soon-to-be mother-in-law. She hadn't smiled once, because in her eyes, Sophia Daniels, the bride, was nothing more than a poor, village-born social climber who tricked her only son into marriage. Earlier that day, Sophia had looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "You're marrying into love, not money. Hold your head up." And for a while it felt true. Ethan Wellingham, tall, kind, charming, had chosen her despite the gossip, despite the tabloids. He had defended her again and again. He even threatened to walk away from the Wellingham fortune if his mother didn't accept their love. Sophia thought that meant something. She didn't know the war had only begun. During the vows, Madame Felicia rose from her seat, interrupting the priest. "Before you speak another word," she said loudly, "this wedding is over." Gasps echoed through the hall. Ethan looked stunned. "Mother, what are you doing?" Felicia's voice was razor-sharp. "I told you I'd never allow this peasant into our family. If you marry her, you lose your inheritance. Everything." Then she turned to Sophia. "And you, get your filthy hands off my son. You were never welcome here. You used your body, your tears, your sob story. But now it ends." Sophia stood frozen, heart pounding, hands trembling. The priest looked to Ethan. "Do you still wish to proceed?" Ethan's silence lasted too long. Too long. And when he finally opened his mouth, the words shattered her. "I'm sorry, Sophia." He walked away. Later that night, Sophia sat outside a closed-down chapel, rain soaking her dress. Her hands clenched the edge of her veil as if it held her dignity together. She had no money, no home, no name, but inside her, two heartbeats, two tiny, defiant lives still growing. She was pregnant with twins. The guest room smelled like mothballs and forgotten memories. Sophia sat on the edge of a thin mattress in her childhood friend's tiny flat, staring at the crumpled wedding veil she couldn't bring herself to throw away. 3 days had passed since the wedding disaster, since her groom walked away, since his billionaire mother kicked her out in front of 200 guests like she was nothing. Now, Sophia had nothing but an unborn secret, two heartbeats, fluttering beneath her ribs like whispers of hope. Flashback. 2 months earlier, Madame Felicia had summoned Sophia to her mansion. The message was clear: come alone. Sophia arrived in her best dress, nervous but hopeful. She thought maybe she was finally ready to accept her. But Felicia didn't offer tea. She offered terms. "Sign this," Felicia said coldly, sliding a paper across the table. "You walk away from Ethan quietly, and I'll wire 50 million naira into your account." Sophia blinked. "You think I'm here for money?" Felicia smiled. "I know what girls like you come for. You can't buy class, my dear. But you can rent it until you get exposed." Sophia stood up, shaking. I don't want your money. I want your respect. Felicia's reply came like ice. Then you'll leave with nothing. Not even your name. Present day. Sophia knew she couldn't stay with her friend forever. Jobs wouldn't come easily. Not with her face plastered all over blogs and gossip sites. But that night, something shifted. She opened her laptop and searched one name. Amara Daniels, her late mother. A forgotten tabloid article popped up from 22 years ago. Exiled heiress Amara Daniels disowned by wealthy fiancé's family after secret pregnancy. Sophia stared at the screen. Was it possible that she wasn't the only one? She looked down at her stomach. We're not cursed, she whispered to her unborn children. We're coming back stronger. Meanwhile, at the Wellingham estate, Madame Felicia poured herself a glass of wine. Ethan sat across from her, eyes hollow. She hasn't called, he said. Felicia didn't look up. She won't. She knows her place now. Ethan's voice was low. What if I made a mistake? Felicia's glass paused midair. You didn't. You just saved your legacy. But deep down, Felicia felt something she hadn't felt in years. Fear. Because no one had ever walked away from her with dignity, especially not a girl who had nothing. And nothing can be dangerous when it has nothing to lose. It was past midnight when Sophia finally found the old journal buried in her mother's wooden trunk. The trunk had been sealed shut for years, untouched in a corner of her late aunt's attic. Inside, between worn-out baby shoes and faded photos, lay the answers she never knew she needed. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. April 12, 2001. They told me to get rid of the baby. Said I was ruining their son's life. But I refused. I chose love over wealth. And I paid the price. Sophia's throat tightened. Her mother, Amara, had lived the same story. Pregnant, rejected, and exiled by a powerful family. The difference? Sophia's twins were a second chance to rewrite that story. Meanwhile, at the Wellingham estate, Ethan sat by his bedroom window, unable to sleep. He stared at his wedding suit still hanging untouched in his closet. The media had calmed. His mother had resumed charity interviews, pretending nothing happened. But his guilt screamed louder each night. He reached for his phone and typed Sophia's number, then stopped, deleted it, and went to bed with silence again. Back in the city, Sophia walked into a dusty registry office. She had sold the last gold necklace her mother left her to pay for the appointment. I want to change my name, she told the officer. To what? He asked. She took a deep breath. Amar Sophia Daniels. And I want to register a trust for my unborn twins. What's the trust called? She smiled softly. The legacy they tried to erase. Later that week, her job search led her to a small bookstore in Yaba. Quiet, underfunded, but in need of help. She didn't ask for much. I just want work. Any work. I'm expecting twins, she said honestly. But I won't be a burden. I'll be your best employee. The owner, a kind widow named Mama Talu, looked her over and said, Your eyes look like a woman who's been broken and glued back together. That's the kind I hire. Sophia got the job. And for the first time in weeks, she exhaled. Final scene. Far across town, Madame Felicia received a letter. Anonymous, sealed, hand-delivered. Inside it was a photo, an ultrasound, with 2 tiny shadows visible. Scrawled on the back in handwriting she couldn't forget. You tried to erase me, but now I carry your legacy twice over. Felicia's hand began to shake, because for the first time, the girl she threw out had returned. Not through the front door, but through her bloodline. Madame Felicia couldn't sleep. The ultrasound photo still sat on her glass desk, untouched but not forgotten. The handwriting on the back wasn't just defiant. It was a warning. You tried to erase me, but now I carry your legacy twice over. She'd underestimated Sophia. Thought she'd beg. Thought she'd disappear. Instead, she was building something. Felicia picked up her phone and made a call. I want her watched. Quietly. I want to know where she works, who she speaks to, how far along she is, and if she's told the press. Pause. And if she talks, shut her down, legally or otherwise. Across the city, Sophia folded books and restocked shelves at the small bookstore. The work was humbling, quiet, and kind. It didn't pay much, but it paid peace. Mama Talou had given her a cot in the back room. She spent her nights there, listening to the soft whispers of the city and the louder whispers of her unborn children. She'd started writing letters to them. For someday. Dear babies, I don't know your faces yet, but I know you're already stronger than the world expects. And I promise, no one will ever throw you away like they did me. Meanwhile, Ethan scrolled through his phone late at night, pausing on an article about maternal care in Lagos. But what caught his eye wasn't the headline. It was the girl in the corner of the photo. Sophia. She was smiling, holding a book in her hand, talking to a group of women in a free prenatal literacy program. She wasn't hiding. She was becoming something more. He stared at the screen. What have I done? He whispered. But guilt wasn't enough anymore. Not after what he allowed. That same evening, Sophia returned to the shop to find the door unlocked. Nothing was missing, but someone had clearly been inside. She spotted it instantly. Her journal, opened, photocopied, and placed neatly back on her pillow. Her heart dropped. She rushed to Mama Talou. Did anyone come in while I was gone? Mama Talou nodded slowly. A man, well-dressed, didn't speak, asked for a book, left without buying. Sophia froze. They knew where she was. She touched her stomach protectively, then stood taller. If they came to intimidate me, they picked the wrong mother. Sophia walked into the community media center with nothing but her handwritten journal, a fire in her eyes, and 2 heartbeats under her ribs. The center was run by young journalists trying to tell stories no one else dared to publish. And today, she had a story the world needed to hear. I don't want fame, Sophia said. I don't want revenge. I want to make sure no woman feels disposable just because she didn't come from wealth. The editor leaned forward. Start talking. Meanwhile, back at the Wellingham estate, Madame Felicia's phone buzzed. Headline: Abandoned bride, pregnant with twins, breaks silence. They wanted to erase me. With it, a photo of Sophia, backlit by the city, holding a microphone and her swollen belly. And behind her on the press backdrop, a single word: resilience. Felicia's hand crushed the glass of wine she was holding. Who allowed this? She barked. Who gave her a platform? Her assistant stammered. It's gone viral. 300,000 shares in an hour. Felicia stormed out of the room. If the world wants a war, I'll give them one. Later that night, Sophia's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Congratulations on your little rebellion, the voice said smoothly. But you just declared war on the Wellinghams. Sophia didn't flinch. Then may the best mother win. She ended the call and quietly locked the bookstore doors for the night. Meanwhile, Ethan stood in front of a mirror, holding a copy of his father's will. Something he'd never looked at until now. His father, dead 4 years, had made a small, secret note in the margins. Protect the woman who carries your future. Wealth means nothing without honor. Ethan picked up his coat and headed out. Sophia sat on her cot, breathing slowly, writing in her journal. Dear babies, they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. She smiled to herself, knowing the storm wasn't over. But for the first time, she was the one bringing the thunder. The bookstore bell jingled softly as Ethan stepped inside. It had been months since he'd last seen Sophia. Months since the day he walked away, guided by fear and manipulated by the woman who raised him. He didn't even know what he planned to say. Only that the article broke him. Sophia looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She looked still. You found the address, she said calmly. Took you long enough. Ethan's voice was dry. Can we talk? We are. Silence. He stared at the small bump beneath her dress, then at the shelves of used books. No security, no wealth, no legacy. Yet somehow, she looked more powerful than ever. I didn't know she'd go that far, he said. My mother threw me out, Sophia cut in. And you let her. You let the world call me a gold digger while I bled alone. She looked him in the eye. You weren't a victim, Ethan. You were silent. That was your choice. He lowered his gaze. I came to help. I want to be here. For the babies. Sophia's lips tightened. You don't get to show up with guilt and call it love. Flashback. Sophia remembered the night she first saw the double heartbeat on the ultrasound screen. She hadn't cried. She'd smiled. God gave me double, she whispered, because he saw how deep the betrayal went. Back to the shop. Sophia finally spoke. You want to help? Great. There's a food donation drive tomorrow. Show up. Carry rice. Stack chairs. Be invisible. No suits, no cameras, no explanations. Ethan blinked. You're serious? Yes, because if you're not here for the legacy, then be here for the labor. She turned away, and just like that, the conversation was over. Meanwhile, in her penthouse, Madame Felicia held a meeting with 2 lawyers. We need a gag order. Public pressure or not. She's dragging our family name through the mud. The older lawyer sighed. We can't silence her. She didn't use your name. She's speaking as herself. Felicia slammed the table. Then we'll go after the father. We'll demand a paternity test. Take the children and prove she's unstable. The younger lawyer hesitated. Ma'am, that would make you look cruel. Public opinion is already shifting. People like her now. Felicia's eyes darkened. Then we remind them who we are. That night, Sophia knelt by her bedside, holding her stomach gently. You won't be born into war, but you will be born into truth. Outside the window, lights from the bookstore flickered softly. The world was watching now, and Sophia Daniels was no longer hiding. The letter came in a sleek white envelope, stamped with the Wellingham family crest. Sophia opened it with steady hands. She already knew what it was. You are hereby requested to appear for a court-ordered paternity test. Failure to comply may result in further legal action. She exhaled. So it begins. She wasn't afraid, not anymore. But she knew this move wasn't about truth. It was about control. Madame Felicia wanted headlines to turn. She wanted whispers to shift. To plant the seed, maybe Sophia lied. Maybe those babies weren't Wellingham blood after all. Flashback. Sophia stood by Ethan's side the day they first found out she was pregnant. He cried. He held her close. He called them their little stars. But when his mother said, choose, he didn't choose them. Present. Sophia made her way to the hospital for the test. Cameras were already outside. Flashing lights. Microphones. Questions. Sophia, is Ethan the father? Did you trap him with the pregnancy? Do you plan to sue the Wellinghams? She didn't speak. But when she turned, the camera caught her profile, calm, strong, unbothered. That photo would go viral in an hour, captioned, Grace under fire, the bride they tried to break. At the same hospital, Ethan waited in a separate room. When he saw her, something in his chest cracked. Sophia didn't even look at him. She walked past like he was furniture. They drew the blood, took the samples. Silence wrapped the entire moment like a funeral cloth. When she rose to leave, he finally spoke. I want to do the right thing now. She paused at the door. Then start by learning how to show up without an audience. And she left. Madame Felicia sat in her home office when her assistant entered with a tablet. The test came back positive. Felicia didn't flinch. She's still not raising them with our name. The assistant hesitated. Ma'am, the press is turning. The people. I don't care about the people. I built this empire for legacy, not sympathy. She turned her chair toward the city skyline. She wants war? I'll fund one. Sophia arrived home to a surprise. On her doorstep sat 5 gift bags, formula, baby clothes, diapers, and a note. From the mothers you inspired. We believe you. We stand with you. Tears welled in her eyes for the first time in weeks. They tried to bury me, she whispered, but strangers gave me roots. Her hands rested gently on her belly. This fight is no longer just mine. Sophia never imagined a single interview would change everything. She'd agreed to it reluctantly, just one young reporter from a podcast called Real Women, Real Voices. No big network, no suits, just raw truth. But truth has a way of spreading. The clip was 2 minutes long. I didn't grow up in wealth. I didn't have a voice. But now I'm carrying 2 lives who will never be taught to stay silent. I wasn't thrown away, I was set free. And just like that, the world listened. 48 hours later, 4 million views on TikTok, 2 million reposts on Facebook. Hashtag We Are Sophia trending globally. Celebrity mothers speaking out. Lawyers offering help. Bookstores requesting author deals. Single mothers gathering for a solidarity walk. Sophia Daniels was no longer a rejected bride. She was a symbol. At the Wellingham estate, Felicia threw her phone across the room. Turn it off. Turn it all off. But she couldn't stop the tide. Her lawyer sighed. Ma'am, every move we make is being watched. If we try to challenge custody now, it could backfire badly. Felicia glared at him. You think I care about public tears? Let them weep. I'll drown them in legal fire. But for the first time, her voice cracked, because even the fire she wielded was now catching her own image. Meanwhile, Ethan walked into the bookstore with a brown envelope. He looked different. No driver, no watch, no entourage. He waited for Sophia to finish speaking with 2 elderly women. When she turned to him, she simply said, What now? He held out the envelope. My shares. My inheritance. I've signed them away. She blinked. Why? Because I want to prove I'm not here for legacy. I'm here for you and them. A long pause. It's too late for us, she said. But not too late for you to grow up. And she walked away. That night, Sophia stood at the rooftop of Mama Toulou's apartment building, holding her journal in the moonlight. Dear babies, I thought I was fighting to survive. But now I see we're rewriting the narrative. From the ground up. She looked out over the Lagos lights. And for the first time since the wedding, she smiled. Not a broken smile. Not a tired one. A real one. The Wellingham Group's annual gala was usually a glittering affair, champagne, diamonds, cameras, and applause. But this year there was something different. The whispers weren't about business deals. They were about Sophia Daniels. Isn't that the girl from the internet? She's the one carrying Ethan's twins. I heard she turned down £1 billion just to walk away. Madame Felicia noticed the stares. For the first time in decades, she wasn't the one being admired. She was the one being questioned. Meanwhile, Sophia was invited to speak at a women's leadership summit. She stood on stage. No makeup team, no designer dress, just confidence. I used to think being enough meant being accepted. Now I know being enough means standing tall even when you're pushed out. Thunderous applause followed. But one person watched in silence from the back of the hall. Ethan. And beside him, a woman he didn't recognize at first, until she stood up and whispered to Sophia as she walked past. My name is Ella. I was once engaged to Ethan's cousin. They did to me exactly what they did to you. Sophia stared. She wasn't alone. Elsewhere, Felicia met with her board of directors. They were nervous. There's growing concern about the public image of the family. Shareholders are pulling back. The Sophia narrative is powerful and dangerous. Felicia slammed her hand down. She is not powerful. She's a girl with a story. The chairman replied quietly, So were you once. That silenced her. Because the board wasn't afraid of Sophia's babies. They were afraid of her voice. That night, Sophia received a call from a publishing agency. We'd like to offer you a book deal. Your journal. Your story. Title suggestion. Thrown out. Standing tall. She sat in silence for a moment. Then whispered, No. Call it Twins of the Betrayed Bride. Sophia looked into the mirror that evening, placing her hand gently on her belly. She wore a simple white dress. No ring. No riches. But the reflection staring back at her? A queen. not crowned by diamonds, but by everything they tried to destroy in her and failed. Sophia's book launched on a cloudy Saturday morning. No press conference, no fireworks, just a post. A single, quiet image of her holding the cover. Twins of the Betrayed Bride. A true story of love, loss, and legacy. Within 24 hours. #1 on Amazon's new and noteworthy. Interview requests from CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera. 6 book clubs across Africa planning live readings. And one particularly angry woman staring at a TV screen in her glass office. Madame Felicia. Her assistant read headlines aloud. Sophia Daniels' memoir outsells major political biographies. From exile to empire. The woman who made pain her power. Will the Wellinghams respond? Felicia's jaw clenched. Shut it down. How? Her assistant asked. Smear her. Dig into her past. Find something, anything. But there was nothing to find, because Sophia had already put everything in the book. Meanwhile, Sophia received a message. Private, unmarked, hand-delivered. It read, if you don't want to lose everything you've built, meet me alone. No cameras, no recordings. F. Sophia stared at it, then slowly picked up her phone and sent a voice note to her publisher. If anything happens to me, release chapter 13 early, the unedited version. She folded the note and went. They met in the same ballroom Sophia had once been thrown out of, the Wellingham estate. Felicia sat like royalty, but Sophia walked in like a storm. You read the book? Sophia asked. Felicia smiled coldly. Page by page. Every lie, every whimper, every cheap attempt at glory. Sophia didn't flinch. Funny. The world calls it truth. You have no idea what legacy costs, Felicia said. No idea what I've buried for this family to stand. Sophia stepped closer. Maybe it's time it fell. Before Felicia could respond, Ethan stepped out from the shadows. Then let it fall. Felicia gasped. You were part of this? Ethan nodded. I was silent once. That silence cost me everything. I won't let it cost my children too. He held out a folded sheet. His official resignation from the Wellingham board. Felicia's empire didn't just tremble. Cracked. Sophia stood outside, wind brushing her face, her phone buzzing endlessly. A notification popped up. Your book is now a required reading in 4 university gender courses. She whispered to her belly. This isn't just our story anymore. It's the fire that lit 100 others. The camera zoomed out. A lone woman once thrown away, now a lighthouse for millions. It was just past 3 a.m. when the first contraction hit. Sophia had been rereading her final chapter when her body stilled, her breath caught, and the moment arrived. They're coming, she whispered. She didn't panic. She'd prepared for this. Mama Talou had her bag ready. The hospital had been informed. Everything was set. Except, nothing prepares you for the moment you become a mother. At the hospital, as the doctors moved around her, Sophia gripped the sides of the bed, breathing deeply. The contractions came faster, sharper, but so did her clarity. Flashbacks flooded her mind. The wedding where she was humiliated, the cold eyes of Felicia, the silent betrayal of Ethan, the night she slept on concrete, the first kick in her belly that reminded her she wasn't alone. Now it was just her and them. You're not just my babies, she whispered through gritted teeth. You're my beginning. Outside the hospital, hundreds had gathered. Not paparazzi, not press, people, women, mothers, survivors. They held candles, signs. We are Sophia. Every mother deserves dignity. This birth is history. News channels began broadcasting live. One reporter said, We're not here for celebrity gossip. We're here to witness a moment bigger than a scandal. A cultural shift. Meanwhile, Felicia watched the live feed in silence. She said nothing, but for the first time, the power-hungry matriarch felt something foreign. Regret. Because Sophia didn't destroy her legacy. Sophia had redefined what legacy looked like. After 8 hours of labor, Sophia screamed one final time as the first cry pierced the air. Then another. Twins. A girl. And a boy. She held them both, sweaty, exhausted, glowing from the inside out. "You've already done more in your first breath than I did in 20 years, she whispered. "You were born into a storm, but you are the calm." Later that evening, Sophia sat by the hospital window, the babies asleep on her chest. Ethan stood nearby, eyes red, saying nothing. Finally, she looked up. "You can love them," she said, "but you'll never own them." He nodded, and Sophia turned back toward the window, whispering, "History didn't write us in, so we wrote ourselves loud enough the world had to listen." 6 months later, the world had changed. Sophia's story had birthed more than 2 children. It had birthed a movement. What started as whispers turned into waves. She was invited to speak at universities, appear on panels, and contribute to national women's policy forums. But she stayed grounded, still lived in Mama Toulou's apartment, still ran her bookstore, still fed her babies at dawn with sleepy eyes and a full heart. At the Wellingham estate, Felicia sat alone in her vast dining room. The long table, once filled with board members and champagne, was silent. A letter sat beside her. "Dear Madam Felicia, due to growing public pressure, the Wellingham Foundation will be renamed. In honor of resilience, in honor of truth. It will now be called the Sophia Daniels Foundation for Women and Children." Felicia didn't cry, but she closed her eyes for a long time. Meanwhile, Sophia walked through the community center she helped fund. On the walls were photos of women who had once been silenced. Above the front door, carved in wood, were the words, "No one is throwaway." She entered a room filled with teenage girls waiting to hear her speak. Sophia smiled, picked up the mic, and began. "They told me I was nothing, but nothing gave birth to everything. And now I want you to know, your scars are not your shame. They are your signatures." Sophia returned home to the twins giggling in their crib. Ethan was there folding laundry. He wasn't her husband, not anymore, but he was present, growing, trying, and for that she allowed peace. She knelt by the crib, kissed both foreheads, and whispered, "They tried to erase you before you were born, but now you are written in ink, in headlines, in hearts, in history." Moral of the story: power isn't always inherited. Sometimes, it's born in pain. The world may try to bury you, but if you rise with truth, even your scars will become your crown. Sophia's journey teaches us that rejection is not the end. It can be the beginning of a legacy. She wasn't born into power, but she gave birth to it. For herself, for her children, and for millions watching. Thank you for watching Twins of the Betrayed Bride. A story of strength, silence, and survival. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. New series dropping soon. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Share this with someone who needs a reminder. They tried to bury you, but you were born to bloom. Glowing Star, see you in the next story.